The text arrived while I was helping customers at my boutique. I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my 20-year-old girlfriend. I've already emptied our joint account. Haha. My hands didn't shake as I read it. My voice didn't waver as I helped Mrs. Peterson pick out a scarf. The only sign that my husband of 12 years had just nuked our marriage via text was a slight tightening around my eyes. I waited until Mrs. Peterson left, her purchase wrapped neatly in our signature silver paper, before typing my response. Good luck. My name is Claire, and at 38, I had just received the most callous goodbye in history. But while Mark was probably gloating over his grand exit, imagining me in tears over his betrayal, I was calmly locking up my boutique for the day. The signs had been there for months. The late nights at work that never matched his pay deposits. The sudden password changes on his phone. The way he'd started going to the gym religiously, buying new clothes, trying desperately to recapture his youth. 3 months ago, I found a receipt, dinner for two at an expensive restaurant, on a night he claimed to be working late. That same evening, I opened a separate bank account at a different bank. A week later, when he mentioned wanting to combine our accounts to simplify things, I agreed cheerfully, while quietly moving my personal savings to the new account. The joint account he just emptied? It contained exactly enough to keep him from getting suspicious, about 2 months' worth of regular deposits. The rest was safely tucked away, along with detailed records of every suspicious transaction he'd made over the past year. My phone buzzed again. Don't bother begging. Melissa and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later. Melissa, the new receptionist at his office. I'd met her at the company Christmas party. Watched her laugh too loudly at Mark's jokes. Noticed how she touched his arm when she thought no one was looking. She was young enough to be his daughter, naive enough to think she was special. I didn't respond to his text. Instead, I called my lawyer, the one I'd consulted 2 months ago when I found the hotel charges on our credit card statement. It's time, I said simply. He just made his move. The papers are ready, she replied. I'll file them first thing tomorrow. Do you want me to have him served in Miami? No rush. Let him think he's won first. Another text from Mark buzzed in. I know this must be hard for you. You're not getting any younger, after all. At least you have your little shop to keep you busy. My little shop. The successful boutique I'd built from scratch. The one that generated more income than his middle management position. The one whose profits I'd carefully kept separate from our joint finances. I smiled, thinking of the certified letters that would greet him in Miami. Let him enjoy his moment of triumph. I spent that evening in our house. My house, since I'd inherited it from my grandmother and kept it in my name, despite Mark's repeated suggestions to add him to the deed. Another lucky instinct that had paid off. While organizing the paperwork my lawyer would need, I found our wedding album. Mark looked so different then, before his midlife crisis had turned him into a caricature of his former self. These days, he wore shirts too tight for his softening middle, tried too hard to connect with the 20-somethings at his office, and used slang that sounded ridiculous coming from a man of 45. My phone kept buzzing with texts from him, each one more condescending than the last. I've been planning this for months. Melissa understands me in ways you never could. You'll be fine. Maybe you'll find someone more your own age. Already told my family. They agree we grew apart. It's nobody's fault, really. I screenshotted each message, adding them to my evidence. Let him dig his hole deeper. My lawyer would love his casual admissions of premeditation, his gleeful announcement about emptying our account. The last text caught my attention. By the way, I used the joint card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my parting gift. LOL. Perfect. I called the credit card company. Mrs. Harrison speaking. I need to report fraudulent charges and cancel a card immediately. Of course, ma'am. Can you identify the charges? 2 first-class tickets to Miami, booked today. Hotel charges at the Royal Palm. And I'll need to remove my husband as an authorized user. Do you have documentation of the fraud? Yes. I have text messages from my husband admitting he used our joint card to book travel with his girlfriend after emptying our bank account. I'll be happy to forward them. The representative's professional tone couldn't quite hide her satisfaction as she canceled the charges. Mark and Melissa would arrive at the airport tomorrow to find their tickets invalidated. Their hotel reservation? Cancelled. My phone buzzed again. Don't worry about the house. I'll let you stay there until you find something smaller. I actually laughed out loud at that one. Did he really think he had any claim to my grandmother's house? Had his ego grown so large that he'd forgotten whose name was on the deed? Another buzz. And I know the shop means a lot to you. We can work out a fair payment for your half. My half of my business. The one I'd built myself. Funded myself. Grew myself. While he complained about my long hours and called it my hobby, I poured my time, energy, and heart into it. I poured a glass of wine, the good stuff I'd been saving for a special occasion. This qualified. Tomorrow, Mark would learn some hard truths about property law and separate assets. But tonight, I'd enjoy the quiet and plan my next chapter. Morning brought a flurry of increasingly angry texts from Mark. What the heck did you do to our credit card? The airline won't honor our tickets. The hotel canceled our reservation. Answer me. I silenced my phone and headed to my boutique. Friday was always our busiest day, and I had a new shipment of designer handbags to unpack. Life goes on, even when your husband runs off with a receptionist young enough to be his daughter. Around noon, his mother called. Claire, dear. Mark told us everything. About how controlling you've been. How you drove him away. He says you're being vindictive now, causing problems with his travel plans. I put her on speaker while I arranged a new window display. Did he mention emptying our joint account? And charging tickets for him and his girlfriend on our credit card. Silence. Then, carefully, well, he said you left him no choice. That you'd been cold and distant. Barbara, I have his texts. Would you like me to read them to you? The one where he bragged about taking our money? Or maybe the one where he mocked my age? Another pause. He did seem a bit cruel. I told him that text message was inappropriate. I appreciate the call, Barbara. I've always liked you. But I think it's best if we end this conversation now. My lawyer has advised minimal contact with Mark's family during the proceedings. Proceedings? Already. Goodbye, Barbara. By late afternoon, Mark's sister Amanda was spreading family gossip through mutual friends. Apparently, Mark and Melissa were stuck at a budget motel near the airport. Their Miami dreams temporarily derailed. He tried using his personal credit cards, but those had been maxed out for months, another red flag I'd quietly noticed long ago. My lawyer called with an update. The emergency hearing is scheduled for Monday. Given his written admission of draining the account, the joint account, and the documented credit card fraud put us in a strong position to freeze all remaining assets. Has he been served yet? I asked my lawyer. Not yet, she replied. But he'll get the papers at his new motel address. Speaking of which, his girlfriend's social media was providing excellent evidence. She had been posting about their adventure all day, including some choice comments about me. I smiled, thinking of my own documentation, a year's worth of suspicious charges, hotel receipts, and text messages that proved premeditation. Mark had been so focused on his grand escape that he'd never considered I might be watching, waiting, preparing. My phone buzzed with another text. You think you're so smart, but I made copies of all the boutique's financial records. Half that business is mine. I forwarded the message to my lawyer, adding it to the growing file of Mark's mistakes. Let him learn the hard way about separate assets and business ownership. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared. The emergency hearing on Monday was everything I could have hoped for. Mark showed up in his new, youthful wardrobe, designer jeans too tight for his age, a blazer that screamed midlife crisis. Melissa waited outside, her youth painfully obvious under the harsh courthouse lighting. My lawyer presented our evidence methodically. Mark's gleeful text about emptying our account. His credit card fraud. A documented history of hidden expenses, each piece carefully collected over months of quiet observation. Your Honor, my lawyer began. Mark's hastily hired attorney tried to interrupt. My client admits to some rash decisions, but Mrs. Harrison's actions have been vindictive and calculating. Calculating? My lawyer shot back. You mean prudent. My client protected her separate assets and maintained detailed records of her husband's suspicious behavior. That's not vindictive. That's smart business. The judge reviewed my documentation in silence. The deed to the house, clearly separate property. The boutique's incorporation papers, entirely in my name. The clean and consistent separation between business and personal finances, something Mark had always mocked as obsessive. Mr. Harrison, the judge finally said, addressing Mark directly. You admitted via text message to deliberately emptying a joint account and using shared credit cards to fund a trip with your girlfriend. Do you deny this? Mark shifted uncomfortably. I was just trying to make a clean break. By committing financial fraud? The judge asked, raising an eyebrow. And now you're claiming rights to property that documentation shows is clearly separate from marital assets? The business grew during our marriage, Mark's lawyer tried again. My client is entitled to. The business was established before the marriage, my lawyer cut in. And Mrs. Harrison maintained strict separation of business and personal finances throughout. We have documentation of every penny invested and earned. I watched Mark's face as reality began to sink in. He thought this would be easy. Empty our accounts. Run off with his girlfriend. Maybe claim half my business in the divorce. He'd never bothered to understand why I insisted on keeping things separate. Had mocked my careful bookkeeping as obsessive. The court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct, the judge announced. All shared assets are frozen pending final dissolution. Mr. Harrison is ordered to return any funds removed from joint accounts within 24 hours. But that money's gone, Mark protested. We spent it on. Then I suggest you find a way to replace it. The judge cut him off. And Mr. Harrison, she added coldly, the court takes a very dim view of using shared credit cards to fund adventures with a paramour. Outside the courthouse, I overheard Melissa asking Mark about their Miami plans. His response was lost in the sound of my heels clicking confidently across the marble floor, heading back to the business he had never understood, never respected. The next few weeks brought a string of increasingly desperate moves from Mark. He tried claiming the boutique had been his idea. He remembered investing money in the boutique's early days. He even suggested he'd been my business partner all along. Claims quickly disproven by my meticulous records. He's getting desperate, my lawyer observed. His girlfriend's social media shows they're staying at her studio apartment now. Apparently, living on a receptionist's salary isn't quite the glamorous escape he imagined. Mark's family started reaching out. Their tone was markedly different from the accusatory messages they'd sent in the beginning. We had no idea, his sister Amanda admitted. He told us you'd been cold, controlling, that he needed to escape. But then we saw his texts, the way he bragged about taking your money. That's not the brother I thought I knew. His mother called again, this time in tears. The things he said, about your age, about replacing you with someone younger. I raised him better than that. At least, I thought I did. I let their calls go to voicemail. Their support might have meant something weeks ago, but now it felt like rats deserting a sinking ship. The boutique thrived, ironically boosted by local gossip about my situation. Women began coming in specifically to show support, often leaving with far more than they'd planned to buy. My ex tried something similar. One customer confided while buying a designer handbag. Thought he'd take everything in the divorce. Men like that never expect us to be smarter than them. My phone still buzzed occasionally with texts from Mark, his tone swinging between anger and manipulation. You've ruined everything. I never meant to hurt you. You'll regret being so vindictive. Can't we work something out? That business would be nothing without my support. I forwarded each message to my lawyer without responding. Let him dig his hole deeper. Through the grapevine, I heard Melissa was having second thoughts. Apparently, sharing her studio apartment with a middle-aged man who couldn't afford his own place wasn't the romantic adventure she'd imagined. The age gap that once felt exciting during secret hotel meetings felt very different in the harsh light of reality. She's been posting about toxic relationships, my lawyer mentioned during an update call, and learning from mistakes. Yesterday, she removed her relationship status. I almost felt sorry for Mark. Almost. But then I remembered his haha after telling me he'd emptied our account. The casual cruelty of his comments about my age. The way he assumed I'd be helpless without him. Instead of pity, I felt something else. Pride. Pride in my foresight. Pride in my quiet strength. Pride in my ability to protect myself while he underestimated me. The final divorce hearing painted a very different picture from the triumphant fantasy Mark had once imagined. Gone was the cocky attitude. In its place, barely concealed panic. Melissa was noticeably absent. She'd moved on, according to office gossip, to a coworker her own age. Mark showed up in his old clothes. The designer wardrobe had been returned, presumably to help repay the joint account he'd emptied. His lawyer looked tired, likely from trying to find loopholes in my perfectly documented separation of assets. Your Honor, Mark's lawyer attempted one last plea. Despite the separate property documentation, my client contributed to the growth of his wife's business through moral support. Moral support? My lawyer raised an eyebrow. Like these text messages? Belittling Mrs. Harrison's business as a little shop? Or these social media posts calling it her hobby? The judge had clearly seen enough. The final settlement reflected my careful planning. I kept my house, my business, my separate assets. Mark got his personal possessions. And his car, which was worth less than he owed on it. You've destroyed me, he hissed as we exited the courthouse. I'll have to move back in with my parents. No, Mark. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't destroy me too. His mother was waiting outside, ready to drive him to her house. His new home at 45. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The man who mocked my age was now living in his childhood bedroom, while I continued to run the successful business. He never understood, never respected. You planned this all along, he accused. You knew this would happen. No, Mark, I said calmly. I just paid attention. And unlike you, I understood the value of keeping good records. His mother stepped between us. That's enough. 6 months after the divorce. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my boutique had expanded to a second location. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Mark struggled to rebuild his life, the little shop he once dismissed was thriving. I'd hired 3 new employees and launched an online store that was gaining national traction. What he had once labeled a hobby had grown into a brand. News of Mark's situation trickled back through mutual acquaintances. He'd tried dating apps, but women his age weren't interested in a middle-aged man still living with his parents. Younger women, warned by office gossip, steered clear. Melissa, I heard, had shared screenshots of his desperate texts, pathetic attempts to win her back after she left. His career suffered too. The company's HR department launched an internal investigation into his relationship with a subordinate. It resulted in a formal reprimand. The promotion he'd expected went to someone else, someone who didn't have a reputation for sleeping with the receptionist. He tried to claim age discrimination, Amanda told me during an unexpected visit to the boutique. Said they were punishing him for dating someone younger. She rolled her eyes. HR just added that complaint to his file. I was surprised to see his sister in my store, but her presence said everything. I know we didn't support you at first, she admitted, running her fingers across a silk scarf. He played the victim so well, but watching how he acted afterward, I'm ashamed we ever believed him. Meanwhile, my lawyer kept me updated on Mark's increasingly desperate attempts to challenge the divorce settlement. Every petition was denied. His claim of unfair distribution was dismissed based on the very evidence he'd provided. He actually tried to argue that the text about emptying the account was a joke, she told me, laughing. The judge asked if, made theft less illegal. The boutique's success brought a wave of unexpected validation. Local business magazines wanted to feature my story, not as a scorned ex-wife, but as a savvy entrepreneur who had protected her interests. Young women reached out, asking for advice. How did you keep your business safe? The best protection, I told one woman who reminded me of Melissa, is preparation. And always trust your instincts. Mark's mother still called occasionally, usually after he'd done something particularly self-destructive. He tried online gambling, she said once, exhausted. Then he got sucked into some pyramid scheme, one of those get-rich-fast things. Every attempt to restore his former lifestyle only buried him deeper in failure. I don't know where we went wrong with him, she sighed. His father and I offered to help him get back on his feet if he'd just take responsibility. But he's still blaming everyone else. You, Melissa, his company, the judge. I listened politely, but I kept my distance. Their family drama wasn't mine anymore. My life had moved forward, filled with plans for a third boutique and a possible expansion into luxury accessories. The only remnant of Mark's presence in my life was a framed screenshot hanging in my office. Have fun with your little shop. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age. Beneath it sat my latest business award. Proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding quietly, confidently, and on your own terms. I actually laughed at that. Let me guess, I said. He had big plans but no way to fund them? Exactly, Melissa replied. Everything was going to work out once his investments paid off, once he got that promotion, once his cryptocurrency definitely increased in value. She shook her head. I'm dating someone my own age now. We have student loans and a tiny apartment, but at least we're building something real. After she left, my assistant manager leaned in and whispered, Was that the girlfriend? No, I said, smiling. That was just another woman who learned the same lesson I did. Speaking of lessons, I turned and gestured toward a young couple examining our designer handbags. Let's talk about your idea for expanding the accessories line. The boutique had become more than just a business. It was a symbol of independence, of resilience, of the power of preparation. Young entrepreneurs often sought my advice, and I always emphasized one thing: protect your assets. Mark's mother called one last time, not to discuss Mark, but to thank me. You taught our family an important lesson, she said. About enabling bad behavior. About making excuses for cruelty. Mark's still living at home, still blaming everyone else for his problems. But we're not defending him anymore. That's your legacy to our family, showing us the difference between supporting someone and enabling them. I thought about that word, legacy, as I reviewed plans for a fourth location. Mark had intended to diminish me, to trade me in for a younger model and take half of everything I'd built. Instead, he'd inadvertently pushed me to become even stronger, more successful. My phone buzzed with a message from my lawyer. Mark filed another petition to revisit the settlement. Judge dismissed it immediately and ordered him to pay court costs. Thought you'd enjoy that. I smiled, imagining him sulking in his childhood bedroom, still trying to rewrite an ending that had been sealed the moment he underestimated me. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting better. 2 years after Mark's cruel text message, I received an invitation to speak at a women's business conference. The topic wasn't divorce or betrayal. It was about building and protecting a successful business. My story had evolved from cautionary tale to inspiration. During the Candé session, a woman raised her hand. My husband says I'm being paranoid, she said. That marriage means sharing everything. Is it wrong to keep my business separate? My ex-husband said the same thing, I replied, right up until he tried to claim half of it in our divorce. I paused. Trust your instincts. Protection isn't paranoia. By then, the boutique chain had grown to 5 locations, each more successful than the last. The little shop Mark once mocked now employed over 30 people and had been featured in several national magazines. Through mutual friends, I heard that Mark had finally moved out of his parents' house into a small apartment above a garage. After his former company downsized, eliminating his position, he'd taken a lower-paying job. His dating profile still listed him as young at heart, though the profile picture was clearly outdated. Ironically, Melissa had become a regular customer at my original boutique. She'd earned her business degree and started her own social media consulting company. "You inspired me," she told me once, holding one of our custom handbags. "You showed me how a woman can build something lasting, instead of falling for empty promises." I kept Mark's cruel text message framed in my office, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of how far I'd come. Beneath it hung a sign: "Success is the best revenge." At the 5-year anniversary celebration of my first boutique, I stood before employees and loyal customers. The space had transformed from a single little shop into the flagship of a thriving business empire. Mark's mother attended, though I hadn't sent her an invitation. She waited until the crowd thinned to approach me. "I saw Mark yesterday," she said, smoothing the fabric of her designer dress, one she'd bought from my store. "He was talking about his glory days, about the life he could have had. He still doesn't understand. He didn't lose everything in the divorce. He threw it away." I thought about that first message. His casual cruelty. His assumption that I would crumble, that I would beg, that I would prove him right. Instead, I built something stronger. Each new boutique was a monument to what women can achieve when they stop dimming their light for insecure men. As I answered a question from my new sales associate, coincidentally, also named Melissa, I caught my reflection in the store window. I saw what Mark never could 5 years ago. Not a woman getting older, but one getting wiser, stronger, more successful. His cruel text message was meant to be an ending, but it was just the beginning. Not just for me, but for every woman who's ever realized she deserves better than someone else's midlife crisis.